Hey guys, it's Charlene from Dreamcraft Create. Thanks for joining me here on Scrapbooking Cards today. We are going to be learning how to do alcohol inks over your texture pastes. So I'm starting out here with the Inner Glow A2 stencil, and I have a piece of vellum. Now I'm going to put that stencil right over the center of that piece of vellum. I do have some magnets here, but you also could use repositionable spray, whatever works well for you. I've got some Arctic Fox Paper Glaze Luxe from Picket Fence Studios. This is a wonderful paste. It is opaque and it's nice and sparkly. It's full of glitter, and so it shines, has some glittery sparkle, and it works really well with this technique. So I'm just being careful to smooth the paste down into all the little nooks and crannies of the stencil. So you can see I'm kind of going around from the edges, so that way I can make sure that all of those little lines on this stencil are nice and smooth. As I pull up the excess paste, I just put it right back into my jar there, and then I'll have it for the next time. Once I'm finished, I can go ahead and peel the stencil off of the vellum, just going slowly. And now I'm going to come in here with the sugar and calorie free cake stamps from Picket Fence Studios. There are all these cute little cakes on there. I've chosen the one here that has some clouds and stars and a rainbow. It's really cute. I'm stamping it out using some black hybrid ink, and I'm going to color it with my alcohol markers. I'm using Olo markers for this today, but you could use any kind of alcohol marker to color in your image. For my blue here, I'm using some B2.2, and now I'm going to come in with B2.4. That's going to be my shading for the blue. So I'm coming in from the sides of the cake. That's going to help the cake look like it is a circular on the edge, give it that 3D look. And then I'm also just coloring around the little clouds and stars with a darker color. That's going to help it to pop. For the clouds, I'm using some CG0 and some CG1, and that's just to shade them to make them look a little bit more 3D. For the stars, I've got some Y2.0 and Y2.2. For that purple little border there down at the bottom, the icing, I'm using some violet, some V2.3 and V2.4. Now I'm just shading the clouds there up at the top as well, again with that CG0 and CG1. For my sun, I'm going a little bit darker. I've got some Y2.3 and then some YO2.3, which is more of an orange. That's going to help make it pop. For the rainbow, I've got a couple of different colors I'm using. I'm using RV.2 and then Y2.0, the B2.2, and then I'm coming back in with that V2.3. I'm just using a slightly darker shade for all of those to shade the rainbow a little bit on the edges. And now I can color in the cake stand itself. I love the way that you can use cool grays to create the look of silver. So I'm using some CG1, CG3, and CG5. And the way I do that is I start with the CG5 on the edges, and then I pull that color towards the center with the CG3, and then I go right down the center with the CG1. That's going to give you that nice shiny highlight in the middle. So now we get to use the alcohol inks over our dried paper glaze Luxe. I'm starting out with some blending solution, and I'm just going to squeeze several drops all the way around on my vellum. And I've got two different colors here. I am using boysenberry and glacier alcohol ink, so a blue and a purple. I'm dropping the purple here and there, and then in between I'm going to put a drop of the blue. You can see I have a blower tool over there on the left hand side, and I'm going to use that to blow the alcohol inks around and get them to spread on the vellum and to mix together. Now, vellum is a non-porous surface, so it works really well with alcohol inks. It doesn't stay wet for quite as long as a Yupo paper does, but you can get some really beautiful blends on the vellum. And so you can see I came back in with some of the blending solution, and now I'm moving everything around. You can see that pretty color it's making there in the center. I'm also going to be using some 91% isopropyl alcohol. Now this is going to help those colors move around as well. The main difference between blending solution and isopropyl alcohol is that blending solution has some additives in it that help to keep everything smooth and moving around. So you could see when I sprayed with the isopropyl alcohol how it created kind of that dot pattern on top of there. So that's a fun effect. So I like to go back and forth between the blending solution and the isopropyl alcohol. And you don't have to use it in a spray bottle. You also could use it in a pipette and just drip on top of your vellum, and that will give you a different look as well. Now I'm going to come back in here and bring a little bit more purple in here. And I'll again add some more of my blue as well. You can see here I knocked over the purple, dropped the blue, and so I do recommend always having, some type of apron or maybe a shirt that you aren't worried about staining when you're working with alcohol inks. So you'll see I did get some on my arm there, but not a big deal. I kept going because I love watching these colors all mixed together. They are so pretty. And when you mix them over the top of any kind of texture paste, the texture paste is going to take on the color of the alcohol inks. And this works really well with that Paper Glaze Luxe because it has all the glitter and beautiful shininess to it. So then once this dries, you're going to see you get these beautiful sparkling glittery bursts of purple and blue going all the way around. Now you do want to make sure to let this dry completely once you get everything where you like it, and that way you're not going to be getting any alcohol inks on your fingers or smearing it or anything like that. So now here I'm going to hold this over a piece of white cardstock so you can really see just how bright and vibrant this is going to be. Look at all that shine and shimmer. Next, I'm going to show you how to adhere this to your card. So I've got some rectangle dies here. I'm going to cut this piece of vellum out using a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch piece. And then I have a piece of double-sided adhesive here that I've cut just slightly smaller than the front of an A2 size card. And so I'm going to apply it to the card base. I start by just putting a little bit on there, and then I can slowly work the rest of the adhesive sheet on there. That helps me to keep it straight and also to make sure I get everything covered. I've used a tool just to help me peel back the other side of the release tape here, and I'm not going to remove it all at once because it'll be a lot easier for me to put the vellum onto my card base if I only leave a little bit of that adhesive exposed at a time. So I'm going to line it up right there with one edge, and you can see that release tape is still underneath there, so that way I don't run into any issues. And then I can slowly peel off the release tape and work my piece of vellum onto the card base. So you see why now it's really important that you wait for your alcohol inks to be completely dry, because you don't want to be running your fingers through them or anything like that. Now let's say there's a few spots that you aren't happy with. You want to take them off your vellum. The nice thing about working on a non-porous surface is that you can use rubbing alcohol, the isopropyl alcohol, to remove anything that you want to off of the vellum. So I've just taken a tissue here and put a little bit of isopropyl alcohol on it, and I'm just going to bring that purple down just a little bit from the edge. because I wanted to have just a little bit more white showing. For my sentiment, I'm going to be using the Lick the Bowl stamps. I'm going to heat emboss this, so I'm using my anti-static powder tool on a little strip of black cardstock. And then I'm going to come in with my embossing ink, and I'm going to make sure to get some really nice coverage on the stamp, so that way the transfer happens really well, and I know that the embossing powder is going to stick really well to the embossing ink. I did double stamp there for that reason as well. And now I'm going to come in with my white embossing powder. You can see I'm using a pair of reverse tweezers to hang on to my little strip. That's really helpful. Gives you kind of that little extra hand to help you out. So I'm sprinkling the embossing powder over everything and then just lightly tapping on the back of my sentiment strip there. Now my goal here was that I'd be able to stamp and not have to cut this strip down. So that's why I am working with such a small piece of cardstock, and it worked out well. Now if I had any little extra stray pieces, I could use a little brush to wipe those away, but I didn't have any on this piece, which was great. So I've brought in my heat tool and I'm just melting all of that beautiful white embossing powder. Now I've cut a little fishtail on each side of that, so that way it has a nice little detail on the edge. And then I've used some black adhesive foam squares here so that I can pop this up on the front of my card. I have not adhered the cake yet. I just have it sitting there so that way I can get a good sense of where I want to put my sentiment, so that way everything will look nice on the front of my card. I do want to make sure that that sentiment is nice and straight, so again those reverse tweezers come in very, very handy. Once I have my sentiment down, I can go ahead and add my cake. Again, use some adhesive foam squares on there. You want to make sure that you are using enough foam squares that nothing gets smushed if this goes through the mail. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to move it up just slightly from my sentiment strip, but that sentiment strip is going to help the cake look like it is grounded. So there is our finished card. Oh, look at all of that sparkle and shine. It's such a fun technique. I hope you guys give this a try. Thank you so much for joining me. Please be sure to like and subscribe. That way you'll know about future videos here on the Scrapbook and Cards Today YouTube channel. Have a great day.